Welcome to NICU Stories. Hey, everybody. Welcome to NICU Stories. I'm Nikia Wilkinson, and today my special guest is Kamillah Simmons. Hi, Kamillah.
Hi, Nikia.
How are you today?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Excellent. So I am so excited to have you on today to share your story about your beautiful baby, who's not so much of a little baby anymore, but I would love, we're excited to have you share your story, your NICU story of him. If you want to go ahead and get started, tell our NICU
Okay.
audience all about your baby's story.
All righty. Well, hello, everyone listening. My name is Camilla Simmons, and I am from Gadsden, Alabama. And I am the mommy of two amazing boys, Ezra and Christian. And Christian is my special baby. He is my handy capable baby, as I always say. Um, Christian is currently 8 years old, and he spent 229 days in the NICU, which is 7 months. Well, let me rephrase that. He spent 5 months in the NICU and 2 months in the step down unit, pulmonary unit training so that we could come home.
Okay.
And Christian is currently medically fragile. He's on a ventilator 24/7. He is trached, he is G-tube fed, and he's an absolute joy. If you were to see him, you would not realize that he is medically fragile. Um, he moves his arms. I've made a mobile out of his Hoyer lift. So he plays with his Hoyer lift all day, every day. And he moves his legs and he kicks his legs like no other. So if you were to look at him at first glance, you would not realize that, he has these handicaps.
Mm-hmm.
And so our journey started when he was 6 hours old. He was not breathing on his own. He was
Mm-hmm.
on 100% oxyhood, and they just could not get him sustained to breathe on his own. And they transported him to a hospital in Birmingham, which was not Children's Hospital. It was actually Trinity Hospital. And on the way to transport him, he had a grand mal seizure and had to be put on the ventilator.
Oh,
And
no.
he's been ventilator dependent ever since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had no idea that they had already taken him and transported him because they told me that they would bring him by my room before they took him. So I was waiting on getting an opportunity to love on and kiss on him because when he was first born, they did the over the curtain swoop so I could see him and then took him.
Oh.
And when I saw him, I noticed that he was limp. I noticed that he was blue, and I noticed that his APGAR scores were super duper normal, abnormal, and low.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew something was wrong, but I had asked my mom to go around to the NICU, well, to the nursery, and ask them why they had not brought him to me so I could see him.
Mm-hmm.
And the way she had come back in the room, you would have thought that he had already passed away. Yeah, because they had already taken him
Uh-huh.
and they did not tell anybody. They didn't tell us. They just took it.
Uh-huh.
So when she walked in the room, I just broke. And she was like, Camilla, they just took him. He's already gone. And I was like, oh, at least he's not passed away,
Oh,
but that was still bad.
to hear it like that, though, you would think like he had passed away. I'm like my heart would have stopped for
Exactly.
like a second.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So I was still inconsolable in that moment. And by the time we found out, they were calling me to let him know that he had had a seizure. He was on a ventilator and he really was not stable.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I was a wreck and I couldn't do anything about it. So we stayed apart from each other for 4 days. I was not able to get to him for 4 days because I
Oh.
was in such critical condition. I'm RH negative and I'm anemic, and they could not keep my blood elevated. They could not keep
Wow.
me. They couldn't just keep me regulated. Like I was having passing out spells and everything. It was pretty bad. And the fourth day, the doctor comes in and he was like, "Well, I'm not telling you that you can go, but I know I'm not going to be able to make you stay." I was like,
Mm.
"Well, I gotta go." So yeah, so when I got to him, my sister, thank God, she was there with my mom, and that's how I was able to see him and know that he was holding on because she was FaceTiming me on her iPad. So I got to see everything. And when I got there, he was not opening his eyes, he was not responding, he was barely stable. And when I got to him, I touched him, I said, "Christian, your mommy is here." That baby opened up his eyes and looked at me.
Oh, I
And
love
my sister was like, "Oh my God, he has never even done that." And I was like, "He knows who his mama is."
exactly.
Yeah, he knew who his mama was. So from there, I began the breastfeeding, the hands on as much as they would allow me to do until they, just stopped providing total care for him.
Hmm.
Um, he was in an open bay. He was not in a closed private room. He was in an open bay. And if this baby coded 3 doors down, everybody knew the baby coded.
Oh.
So it was a very scary and unique situation because never once did I even think we would have to be there. And we actually stayed in that hospital for 9 weeks until we kind of had to just go crazy for them to pay attention to my baby to let them know that we needed to be transferred to a better hospital because they were like, "Oh, he's maintaining. He's not going to get any better. We don't think. We don't know. We don't this. We don't that." And they were like, "Well, if we take him to get a CAT scan, an MRI, he codes, there's nothing we can do about it."
Oh my
And I'm like,
gosh.
at that point, I was like, "Yeah, we got to get out of here."
Yeah.
And so the day of his transport, there was another baby who coded and was in critical condition. And his mom looked at me, and it was like I instantaneously knew that they needed to go before us. So I kind of willingly just gave up his spot because I'm like, Christian is stable today. I think he'll be okay to make it another 2 or 3 days. And he was, and 3 days later, we were able to be transferred to Children's of Alabama.
Okay.
Then when we get to Children's, 180-degree turn. I mean, we had our own private room. The parents had their own lounge area. The nurses were, you had one nurse. You didn't have to share nurses. You had one nurse for the whole shift versus 3 or 4 nurses working on this child, that child, that child. And it was totally different. They did everything different. So I was thankful for that.
Hmm.
I was very appreciative of that. And I don't know, it was just like one of those things. It was a sigh of relief that my baby was going to be okay and he was going to get better, that he was
Hmm.
just not being pushed off. So I was told that he was going to have a trach. He was going to um, have a G tube to feed him, and he was going to need a muscle biopsy to see if they could figure out what was going on with him. And from all of that, we found out that he has a CoQ10 enzyme deficiency. So from Christian's muscle biopsy, we found out that he had a CoQ10 enzyme deficiency.
Hmm.
And from that deficiency, it loosened up his joints because he was very hypotonic, where his joints and his muscles constricted all the time and he would shake.
Mm-hmm.
and he would shake all the time like this.
Oh
If he
no.
raised his hand, he would shake. If you
Mm-hmm.
tried to stretch him out, he would just shake.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as he started taking that CoQ10 enzyme, the medicine for it, he stopped the shaking. He started using his limbs like, hey, I can control it. And
Oh wow.
it was like a miracle. And I'm like, okay, is he healed? Like, can we
Uh-huh.
go now? And that's what I was thinking. But unfortunately, because he had experienced the first 9 weeks of his life not being held, not being stretched, not being
Oh
moved,
no.
he lost like all of that motor skills that, would just easily make it easy for you to sit up.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, if we walk side to side, he doesn't have any of those motor skills because he wasn't able to be touched.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we did start physical therapy with him after he got his trach and everything. We started OT with him, and they did amazingly well with him. He had a little bitty AFOs to make sure his legs would not, you know, kind of turn in, to make sure his feet wouldn't turn in.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, we have no problems with that, thank God.
Oh wow, that's a blessing.
It is. It is. And then he was thriving. I will say that he was thriving. And when it was time, we were kind of taken off guard because they were like, okay, you all are ready to move up to the pulmonary unit. And I'm like, what? Like one day they came in and they were like talking about you may be able to go. Then the very next day, the pulmonologist came and gave us a tour of the pulmonary unit. And he was like, yeah, you guys will be moving here tomorrow.
Oh
And I was like, oh
wow.
my gosh, it happened that fast.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as we got there, they played no games with us. We began immediately training to come home. And when I mean training to come home, we had to learn. We call it DORA. It's called decannulation, obstruction, reinsertion, and what's the A? What is the A? Something. I'll think of it. But we had to learn. We had to learn Dora, and everything Dora was is like if he becames himself, we need to be prepared to put the trach back in.
Oh wow.
If there is an obstruction in the trach, we need to be able to do an emergency trach change, put it back in without panicking. If we have to reinsert it, we need to know how to reinsert it and not just try to stick it back in.
Oh
I mean,
wow.
it was a lot. And you got to think, I'm a new mom, have never even thought about going into nursing. I'm terrified of blood. And when they told me all of this, I panicked and I went back to the Ronald McDonald house and I called my mom. I was like, I can't do this. She was like, well, you don't have a choice. And
Right.
my mom is a retired nurse and a nursing instructor. And she was like, Kamillah, you're just going to have to put your big girl panties on and get it done.
At least you
She
have
said,
friends in that profession that can help, right?
mm-hmm.
That's a
And she
blessing.
was like, they're not just going to send you home without you being trained. That's what we're here to do is train. So I did it and I was just like, Lord have mercy. And my thing was every time I got to something that I was nervous about, I would say, okie dokie, okie dokie, okie dokie. So we had to learn how to change out all of his equipment and change out the tubing on his ventilator. It was a lot. And I was like, I see why it's going to take 2 months for us to train to get home. It's a lot. And we had to do that every single day. Like we had a schedule that we had to train. And I have a notebook. I keep a notebook. I don't know if you can see everything is written,
Mm-hmm.
but I always keep a notebook and I would keep a schedule of what time we started, what we did, when we did it, how to do it. Like I would make notes mentally to make sure that I wouldn't forget. And I would go to sleep writing to make sure that I had it for the very next day. I'm like, yeah, I'm bringing my baby home and I'm going to rock it out. So
I hear that.
after I got over that fear, I was like, I got this. I got this. My baby's coming home with me, and that's that.
That's that.
That's that. And so we got done with training. Everything went great. And I'm going to scooch over to having to move out of the Ronald McDonald house. Well, we had been in the Ronald McDonald house for 7 months, the whole entire time we were
Wow.
there. hmm The whole entire time we were there, we were at the Ronald McDonald house. So, of course, it was like we had made another home at the
Right.
Ronald McDonald house because we brought had to have things for Christian. I breastfed, um, and I breastfed the whole entire time that he was in the hospital.
Oh,
So
wow.
I had bottles, I had the pump, I had coolers, and thank God the Ronald McDonald House does have a nursing station,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not always available. It's like a first come, first serve. So if your boobs are engorged, it's a hit and a miss.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, you can't keep the key from the other people because it's only one pump
Mhm.
and it's first come first serve. So I did have a personal pump that I was able to acquire from the health department for free,
Mhm.
and that thing was a saving grace.
I was able to get mine through my insurance. I did not know that the insurance covers breast pumps.
Yes, they do, and I actually researched that,
Mhm.
and I was able to the. I'm gonna tell it like it is. The health department gave me a dinosaur breast pump. And so I was like, this isn't gonna work. So then I started reaching out to the insurance, and they were like, okay, you have a choice of a Spectra or Medela. And I was like, I hear so much about Medela. That's what I'm used to in the hospital. That's what I'm gonna choose. And it was
That's what I got
perfect.
too. Mhm.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was perfect. And I was so excited. Never thought I'd be excited about a breast pump. I was like, it's the simple things, you know?
Right, right.
And so I was able, I would, when I would go to the hospital, after coming from the hospital to take a shower at the Ronald McDonald House, I'd have my backpack, my breast pump, and a fanny pack. And I was actually in school getting my master's degree while
Mhm.
Christian was in the NICU. I actually completed my master's degree while Christian was in the NICU.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So at the Ronald McDonald House, we were able to eat there, sleep there, wash our clothes there. I was able to pump there, and we were able to cook there. And I met so many people from so many different walks of life with children who had so many different medical complexities, children who were um, 18 years old, children who were babies like Christian. And I honestly keep in touch with over half of those families to this day.
That's
And
amazing.
we usually talk. I usually talk to everybody probably once or twice a week.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's just individual talking, but we all talk because we're all family.
Mhm.
And when we were at the Ronald McDonald House, I know it. When we were there, we were provided meals almost every day. Breakfast was not provided. Um, Lunch, snacks, and dinner were mostly provided every day.
Mhm.
And then the days that we did not have it, my mom and I would cook for the
Mhm.
whole house.
Oh, that was nice.
Because there were some people who just could not afford, you know, dinner, a simple burger, or a simple meal, even if it was just beans, cornbread, and greens.
Right,
It's
right.
nutrition.
Mhm.
And they ate it. They were hungry. And I was like, if you're hungry enough, it's here. If
You
you
gonna
don't
eat
want to
it.
eat it, if you don't want to eat it, keep
That
it
is so
moving.
nice though. I have to say the Ronald
So,
McDonald House is such a blessing in these situations.
mhm,
I mean, they're
absolutely.
such a lifesaver and such a blessing in so many ways. There's so many families that, I've interviewed and spoke to and share their stories, and everyone can reflect back to the Ronald McDonald House, which is
Oh
amazing.
yeah, it is. And when we left the Ronald McDonald House, I was like, Mama, this is a charity that I want to give back to. I want to pay everything forward to what we did back to the Ronald McDonald House. This is a charity that I want to, just say, hey, we're in it for it. They blessed us, they helped us. I want to do the same for another family. So, with that being said, they started asking me to speak on behalf of the Ronald McDonald
I
House.
love it. I love it. I
And I
love
was
it.
like, absolutely. Absolutely. So, the biggest engagement that I got to speak at was the my 365 Black 65 that they do with the concert, the gospel concert.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
yeah, I actually spoke at the concert. With
Nice. That's pretty
yeah, with
cool.
yeah, I got to meet Vicky Winans, Smokey Norfolk, John P. Key, and it was amazing. And it was so funny because I had this whole little spiel written out on this paper, and I get up there and I'm like this. And I told him, I'm like, y'all, I had a speech written down, but I can't. I can't even read right now. So I'm just going to tell you what comes out.
See,
And
the silver lining
it
of
was
this
amazing.
whole situation, of the whole process, like there's just it's an unfortunate situation, but there's so many blessings that come out of it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You said you're an ambassador for Ronald McDonald House, right?
I am. We are an ambassador for the Ronald McDonald House. And that came about from just us being charitable with giving back, with wanting to help. So every year they have the Red Shoe Run to raise money for the Ronald McDonald House. And not this past year due to COVID, but year before last, we participated in the Red Shoe Run. And Christian was one of the featured children. And we became an ambassador family for the run for that year. And we were at mile marker number one. So everybody saw us. And we just were the cheer crowd for that corner. And on top of that, we were the rocking raisers. We were the family who raised the most money for the charity for that year.
Wow, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So, how is your son doing today?
Christian is doing amazingly well today. With COVID, once again, I have withdrawn from taking him to therapies. So I do everything with the nurses. We stretch him, we get him up. I have a lot of equipment here that I've invested in so that we can continue him, just so he won't lapse. You know what I mean? So he
Right,
won't regress.
right.
And he loves it. He cracks up every time when we get him up on the ball and when we stand him up and stretch him out. He thinks it's the funniest thing. And like, it's not funny. I promise you, it's not funny. You're a solid 66 pounds, son. It's not funny.
Oh,
Yeah, so I mean, he's growing, he's thriving. He is the happiest kid you ever want to meet. His favorite words are "oh yeah." Anything you say, he'll say "oh yeah."
oh.
So that and he communicates with his eyes. He knows yes and no. He has a bad habit of sucking on his fingers. So you'll say Christian Walter, and then he'll be like, "Okay, I'll eat my blanket." we
Oh.
have to we have to redirect him with those fingers because he'll eat them until they're. But other than that, he's amazing. He's still being tube fed. He's on a feeding pump at night.
Hmm.
It's medicines for seizures and I think that's another thing I did not mention. He does not have a diagnosis. He has underlying diagnoses, but he
Mhm.
does not have a main diagnosis. That's
Oh,
why he's on the ventilator.
gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But other than
wow.
that, he's my miracle baby.
He's definitely a miracle, and I'm so glad that you wanted to share and take your time and share with us. Like you
Thank
could have shared this
you.
with anybody, but I'm so grateful that you took the time to share with NICU stories, Christian's
Thank
beautiful
you
story.
all.
And it's so
Thank
good to hear
you.
how jolly he is as well. Such a happy baby. Well,
Yes.
not baby, he's a big boy now.
Yeah, look, he'll always be our baby.
So, is there any way that anybody can follow Christian's story? Does he have a social media? How can
Yes,
anyone
he
follow?
does. He well, lately I've been posting a lot of Christian on TikTok.
Oh, okay.
It's
Share
so
it.
funny because he's been blowing up on TikTok versus me. So I was like, of course you are Christian. So our TikTok is MZKAY, the number four, and the letter U. So Miss K for you. And then he has a page on Facebook, and it's Team TEAM Christian, spelled like a regular Christian, Walter, WALTER. And then I have a business page that's on Instagram, but I post Christian as well on there. And it is Southern Smiles by KAY. So that's how you can see our journey. I post almost every day with Christian, with me, with Ezra. So I welcome you all to join our journey and laugh. And I hardly ever post things that make us upset or that'll make you cry. So when you come to our page, it's all joy.
I love it. So definitely, you guys, if you want to follow Christian Story, you can reach him on TikTok. You can see him on Instagram, and you said Facebook, correct?
And Facebook, yes, ma'am.
All right. So I am so happy once again that you took the time to share his story with us and send him our love for Nikki's stories.
I
And you
sure
guys
will.
who are listening, thank you for taking the time to listen to Christian Story. And if you want to continue to follow, you can follow him on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Once again, you can follow us as well on Instagram. We're not on TikTok, but you can follow NICU Stories on Instagram, Facebook, and on any podcast outlet. Thank you again, Kamillah, for taking the time
You're
with
very
us. It was such
welcome.
a pleasure. And we
Thank
will
you.
keep
I
following
enjoyed
his
it.
journey as well.
Most definitely.
Have an amazing evening.
You do the same. Thank you.